I'd like to call to order the Merrimack School District SAU 26 School Board meeting January 4th, 2023. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So I just want to make note that board member Lori Peters is excused this evening. She is going to be watching from home. Also, Jenna and I are going to be co-chairing the meeting. This is my first meeting of trying to chair since my hearing loss, so we're going to do our best. And we're going to start with public participation. If anyone in the public would like to come to the microphone, if they could say their name and address. Hi.
Test, test, test. 1, 2. Hit a little bit. You're hired, Matt. You're hired. Sorry.
My name is Joanne Grobecker. I live at 27 Craig Drive, and I'm here as a private citizen and a mother of 2 elementary school students. I want to thank you for the work you do to ensure every student in Merrimack receives an appropriate education. I came to give public comment because at the last meeting, Amy Doyle had said the district was implementing the reading program foundations across all of the elementary schools. And this is a huge moment in Merrimack, a huge moment. We're going to be a model for the state of New Hampshire around literacy with the combination of Haggerty, foundations, having those decodable texts to support the teachers with the shift to structured literacy. And I wanted to thank Amy, Bill, Kim Yarlott, who's now in Concord, for the work you've done to improve and align the literacy curriculum across all the elementary schools. The effects of this change will positively impact the budget for years to come. Teaching all students to read in general education will impact the district positively through these students' entire student school careers. The students will have improving behaviors, improving proficiency in other subjects, especially because the math program in Merrimack is so language-based. This will contribute to decreasing the district's dropout rate and decreasing the number of students experiencing school refusal in the upper grades. You are changing the trajectory of students' lives. I would like to personally thank Mastrocola Elementary Principal Michelle Romaine, the teachers, paras, and therapists at Mastrocola Elementary School. My 2 daughters have received amazing instruction in reading and a meaningful education in their time at MES. I'm happy to see the district following MES's lead in teaching phonics and phonemic awareness at all of the elementary schools. I would like to thank the board specifically for all of the time and care. You put in so much time and so much care, and I greatly appreciate that to ensure all the students in Merrimack receive an appropriate education. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to participate in public participation? Seeing none, we're going to move to informational updates, superintendent's report.
Thank you. Well, I wish you and our staff, our students and families a very happy new year. It was certainly a different story at the Mastrocola Elementary School between Christmas and New Year with a major flood as a result of a broken pipe. And this gives me an opportunity to say what an outstanding job Matt has done, Tom Trousseau, Mike, what is Mike's last name again?
Dumais.
Mike Dumais, a number of the custodians and their staff, Michelle and her staff, Nikki and her staff. They have done an exemplary job. And the parents now who want to pitch in and make some contributions to restoring some of the materials and supplies that the teachers lost that they may have paid for themselves. You know, it's always comforting to know in a school district that you have people to know, people who know what to do, when to do, how to do it, and why to do it. And that is Matt and Tom and Mike and others who just seamlessly went right to work when we received a call that I believe it was that Monday morning, the day after Christmas. And as Tom Trousseau said to both Matt and I, if I'm calling this early on a holiday morning, it's probably not good news. And we said, yes, Tom, we understand that. And it wasn't good news. But I'll tell you, this school district could not have been better represented by the people I mentioned. And so there's reason to take great pride in the work that they have done. So, and that is it.
Thank you. I just also want to say Happy New Year to everyone. I'm not sure I'm supposed to do this, but I want to thank Joanne for coming to the microphone and saying all of that really important information. I also just want to take a minute to thank the rest of the elementary administrators and the language arts coordinators. Since I came on board, this is something that was a real priority for all of us, and I'm just really excited that we were able to make this happen. And I couldn't agree with you more that the trajectory of students, if they are competent readers, it's a lifelong commitment to learning and just feeling like you are a capable person in the world. So I'm really looking forward and hoping for those changes that you talked about. So thank you. The budget, I'm looking forward to going through my first budget season here. All of my elementary colleagues here. It'll be interesting to see us go through that process. I'm excited to hear from them tonight. And I also just wanted to follow up about the communication about homework. I did send out some information to staff. You know that we're moving forward with updating our grading policies primarily at the middle and high school. So communication went out to staff before break, communication to the community on Tuesday. Allison Huckins told me that we sent 3,000 emails in one click, so that's a lot. And I've received about a dozen or so messages. You may also receive some. So if you do and you need more information from me, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to reiterate what Bill just said. I want to thank everybody involved in that cleanup. Michelle, the staff at JMU's, the teachers at MES who came in, the teachers at JMU's, all the phone calls we got for looking for how they can help and everything like that. This point in time, we're in the process of cleanup. There were 2 carpets that were replaced in the offices that were there. All the floors are going to get redone. All the ceiling tiles are going to get redone. All the materials that were wet are going to be disposed of. It's all being handled by Primex, our insurance carrier, so there won't be a large impact to the budget aside from our $500 deductible that we have to pay. Thank goodness for that. It's going to be a process. It'll probably be 3 to 4 weeks before we're back to where we were, but stuff like that kind of brings people together. It's kind of a camaraderie kind of thing. In the face of adversity, who steps up and everything like that, and it's really kind of heartwarming to see people keep their attitudes, keep everything positive in the face of adversity. I guess some of us have been through this quite a few times, and so it's like, okay, this is what we do. We know what we're doing, and others it's brand new, but everybody has the same positive attitude. And I just want to say I appreciate everybody who was involved in it and everybody who continues to support us in the Merrimack School District. I just want to say a big thank you to all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. School board update. So the board would like first to thank the maintenance crews for their dedication to get our schools open after the pipe break that flooded the Mastrocola facility. The board recognizes that many of our team gave up valuable time with their families to come together and address a serious problem. We're grateful and we're fortunate to have the staff we do. A special thank you to Bill and Matt, Tom, Michelle Romaine, and everyone who made a difference. As we begin our budget presentation, I want to remind the board of our legally required duties monitoring the school district finances. I deeply appreciate Matt's email 2 weeks ago, along with State Rep Rosemary Rung, warning us of the $2 million shortfall that we're going to have next year from the state of New Hampshire. As a school board, we need to understand the differences between our governance our role, governance, and the role of the administration. We must understand how this budget will impact our town property rate, and we need to track that over a 5-year period. We should work to avoid wild swings, things that we have been talking about. Questions we need to ask are, is our fund balance, and what are our assets versus our liabilities? We understand that 80 to 85% of our budget is directly linked to salaries. So we need to keep a close eye on our staffing ratios and making adjustments through attrition rather than termination when possible. This budget was prepared before the administration had any idea that we would be facing these loss of funds next year. We've all agreed that we support our teachers, and we're working very hard and together to pass their contract, which is still just another step in the right direction. It moves them up the ladder, but they're still not in the top tier. I highly recommend reading the book, The Tipping Point. It's a philosophy how quickly tides can change and winds can change. I believe the citizens in Merrimack have full trust in our board and our administration, and they've been extremely supportive of us. This all puts the board in a tight spot because we've acted as a very highly effective board, and we created goals and a vision, and we started to get our schools back on track after COVID. Nationally, math scores have decreased 8 points. Reading scores have nationally, in all grade levels, decreased 3 points. I think we need to look at how we're delivering our services and make as many adjustments as possible to increase student learning. I think our board is facing a crisis, but I have full faith in this administration's guidance that we'll be able to come together and put forward the best possible solutions. My hope, of course, is the state of New Hampshire will start putting money back into public school and stop shedding their responsibility to our children. Any questions? Okay. Budget presentations. We're going to start with Dave. If you could come up to the microphone and introduce yourself. Tell us how long you've been in the district. No, you don't have to, but I know it's a long time.
He doesn't
Give
remember.
us a little
That's awesome.
background.
David, just want to make sure your microphone is on.
All right. Appreciate you having me here tonight. My name is Dave Zicki with the Food Service Department. I think this is my 28th or 29th year, something like that. It's been a long time, since '94. My kids were in school at that time, so they've all come through, and I appreciate all the teachers that have taught them well, because they're all doing fine. So I would like to take this moment to present the budget for the Food Service Department. I represent all 6 schools, 3 elementary, upper elementary, middle, and high school food service operations. One thing about the food service operation, it is a self-supportive operation. We do operate with federal reimbursements. We do operate with cash receipts from parents paying for school meals. Over the last few years, we've had quite the variation of operations, from the pandemic, from operating outside in the cold to doing the last year was free meals for all students. So this year started up with a few minor issues. Some of them are supply chain issues, product availability, the rising costs of certain products, and we don't know if that's going to turn around in the next year or if it's going to take 3 years. I think some of the products that we do purchase regularly, we are part of the buying group for the New Hampshire buying group, and we are in a locked bid for the next year. So next year we're going to be out to bid again, and it's depending on what products are available and what people are willing to bid on our programs. So I think Naomi had a question for me, and some of them, it was just on what products are more expensive this year, and I just have to say most everything is more expensive this year. You can go into the grocery store and come out with one bag and it's $100. So we do see that across the board. Some of the issues that the distributors have had is that the products are costing more with labor, with transportation, with the actual packaging of some of the products. We've had issues with plastics. We couldn't get styrofoam products. So even the trays and the forks and the napkins that we use, all those products have gone up too. The one thing that we do have every year we have a surplus of commodity products that we do have available to us, and the commodity products that we have this year is $105,000, to which half of it we could use fresh fruit and vegetables. So that has really helped us a lot because I can order fresh fruit and vegetables every week, distributed through a purveyor with USDA funds. So that's
This
been
isn't state funds. This is USDA.
yes,
Correct. We just want to make sure we
Yep.
separate because the state reimbursement is probably $15,000 a year, Dave.
yeah.
So yeah.
But
So
the-
state of New Hampshire doesn't really contribute much to the food service program
No.
as far as funding.
Right.
A lot of it comes from the federal government.
So the USDA gives us an amount of money per number of meals we serve each year. So the more meals we serve, the more commodities that we are allowed. So again, the great part was fruit and vegetables are available. The costs of those are going up too, and lettuce has gone through the roof. But at least I have that money available to us, which is great. One of the items I do have on my budget is the replacement of food warmers to Reed's and Thornton's Ferry. Now, Reed's, Thornton's, and Mastrocola Elementary are satellite operations, so we do have to ship hot food in, and we have to keep it warm when we get there. Those units have been there since I started, so I think they're over 30 years old. So at this point, the guy that works on my equipment says, it's getting harder to find replacement parts, and it's costing almost as much to get those replacement parts as it would be to look at purchasing a new unit. So that is one of the things that I have on my budget as well.
Yeah, it's one thing that we do in Merrimack is we drive the wheels off the car, right? So we don't replace it just because the finish is worn or something like that. Dave's done an excellent job in working with his vendors, his mechanical people, everything like that to keep what we have going as long as we can in the best possible means until it gets not to be cost effective anymore. So, and plus I just want to say, during the summer of COVID, when we were passing out free meals during the summertime, he was there every single day during the summertime.
Thank you for that.
I just want to bring that up because we
Appreciate
kind of lose focus on that kind of stuff from a couple of years ago. But
Every day plus
every
other
day
days
plus
on the weekend.
Every
I know on the
day.
weekends too, Dave.
Some people work on Christmas and the day after Christmas.
Yeah, I do have to
What
say
I was
one
going to say,
thing.
Dave, I forgot to say this is the board has requested that they ask you the questions, so they felt like it was awkward in the
I
past. So
apologize.
I'll
Well,
start, Naomi.
Yeah,
Well, I think
she did ask me via email.
Yes.
So, but
Was your presentation done though?
I pretty much done. I just one thing I wanted to ask is if I could get a hand for all the employees that work for me because they have done a great job. We're hard to find people to hire, so a lot of them are doing 2 or 3 things at the same time.
So I just want to say that my kids, I have kids at the high school and kids at the elementary school, and they come home and they talk about the people in
Yeah.
food service.
I hope it's
And
good.
They know them by name, and they'll tell me things that those people say to them and how they make their name. And then I'll bump into some of those people in the grocery store and they'll say, "Oh, I saw my kid and whatever." And so they really do make a huge difference as well. And
that impact filters down into it. They come home talking about it. So they aren't just there to serve food. They are becoming part of the school. They are part of the school community, and they have an impact on these kids at the same time. So
I appreciate that.
thank you.
My mother-in-law worked in a school cafeteria for 30 years, so they're my people. I feel connected to them.
Nice.
And I know for a fact, based on my conversations with her, just exactly what Jenna said, how much of a part of the community they really are, and often forgotten about outside of the schools. Kids know who they are, teachers know who they are, but once you leave that building, a lot of people don't, and they're critical and just amazing people for doing what they do.
Do you want to continue your questions?
I only had one other question, and I'm gonna have to refer back to my notes to remember what it was. Oh yeah, it was kind of a follow up of the one about. I was curious about what was going up and what was causing stuff to go up. Is are we gonna have to raise lunch prices to keep up with those rising costs, or do we have a plan for addressing that?
Every year we have to go through a series of things that will determine if we have to meet certain lunch prices each year.
Isn't it the paid lunch equity,
The PLE tool.
the PLE tool? Okay, I call it something different, but it's
Now you
the
need to-
PLE
yeah.
tool that Dave goes through, and
Yeah.
you can explain it.
So that PLE tool is based on what the federal reimbursement rates are. So we have to try to equal that. Has nothing to do with the cost of food right now because, again, we did raise our prices this year. So we had gone up a quarter across the board. We hope that that doesn't happen again, but it's possible that may be something we have to talk about in the springtime, depending on where we're sitting. The one thing I will mention is I know there's been a lot of talk across the country because I do belong to the School Nutrition Association of New Hampshire, and I do represent New Hampshire in Washington, D.C. every year. We meet as a group from people across the country, and with the universal feeding that we did last year, the free meals for all students, it was a great success. Unfortunately, it didn't get into the budget, the country's budget last year. They may talk about that again in March, and I think it would be a big bonus for the students that they were offered a free meal as part of their education every year.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Ken?
Well, I just a comment on that. I think we learned the last couple of years how, for some families, that's where their meals come from, and how important those meals are. And I agree. I think that should be a part of the federal plan as well. I don't have any questions for you, sir.
Very good.
See if I could just keep Dave here for one more second. Because, what you said kind of really resonates with me because there's the free and reduced application where, the criteria is such that, if you make $60,000 or less, you have to have a family of 10 to qualify.
Right.
But there's a lot of families that we found out during the COVID years that were basically, borderline food insecure. The parent got laid off, something happened, change in lifestyle, and it's not necessarily a permanent thing. So to have the district at some point in time or the federal government subsidize the food service program at the national level for the local level,
Yeah.
I think would be something that would be appreciated by everybody because no kid should worry about where the next meal is coming from.
Very true.
So, Dave, my questions aren't in here, so I didn't send them to Santa. I sent them direct. But one of my first questions was, I was approached by State Rep Nancy Murphy about a breakfast program, and her concern was, would we be able to have the staff to do a breakfast program, and how much would it cost us if we were able to get funds for a breakfast program, but we would still have to pay for staffing? Would it be something that would work for us? And is there the need to have free breakfast at our schools?
Well, would it be free or would it be part of the school breakfast program, like the lunch program?
Right.
So it would benefit the free and reduced students, of course, because they would be able to come and have a breakfast every morning. We do have breakfast at the high school. We have a good following of kids that do come in, especially the high school kids. We see them every day, so it's great. It's great that we are offering that. If we offered it in all schools, I'd probably have to do some staffing increases. Right now, the elementary supervisors report to the bigger schools, the high school, the middle school, and the upper elementary to help in the morning. They would probably have to be deferred to their school. And then I'd probably have to have extra staffing in the larger schools to help in that morning process. But it would be something to look at. If it's something that's necessary, that it's required for every school district to have that, then we
If
can.
it's something that's mandated by the state,
Right.
and then we have to make it work
Mhm.
by virtue of charging
Right.
and by virtue of the free and reduced system.
Yep.
And if we had the appropriate staffing,
Yep.
is it going to be self-funded in that fashion?
It'll be
There's a question
It'll
mark
be a
there.
questionable.
That is the real
break even.
question.
It
Thanks,
may
Matt.
be an unfunded mandate from the state.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the other question you answered in your presentation. So thank you very much, and thank you for all your years of service.
All right. I appreciate
Thank
that.
you for a great job.
Thank you.
Dave.
Okay, so next up is the elementary schools and Master Cola and the upper elementary. So I think we're going to have to bring more chairs up so we can keep like the three. And if everyone could, Julie and Michelle and Bonnie and Nicole, could all introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about how long you've been in the district and
Can I
why
just
you love Merrimack so much.
can I just clarify too what Lori was saying about the questions? I think some of us on the board, for those of you that have been around, I think some of us on the board felt it was really. I'll speak for myself. Last year, as a new board member, thought it was super awkward that I emailed my questions and then that you guys read them to me. So what we were thinking was that you could do your presentation. You guys have these in front of us. In your presentation, you might answer our questions. So then we can start. Okay, Naomi. And then she could say, well, you answered this one and this one. Can you answer this one? Would it be all right if we did it that way? Okay. Thanks.
We planned for that.
Okay, great. Because last year people read them and it was super weird. So we're going to try to not be weird this year. Awesome. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll start with Bonnie to introduce yourself.
All right. I'm Bonnie Painshow. I'm the principal at Reeds Ferry Elementary, and this is my 4th year in administration, 2nd year as principal.
I'm Michelle Romaine, principal of Master Cola Elementary School. And I will introduce Alicia Hanson-Prue as well because she's not near the microphone. She's our assistant principal at MES.
And I thought Laura was going to come up, but then Laura Livy is Reeds Ferry's wonderful assistant principal. Right.
Julie DeLuca, and I'm the principal at Thornton's Ferry School. This is my 18th year, and so I love Merrimack. And I want to introduce Brooke Ross, who's in her 1st year as assistant principal at Thornton's Ferry.
Good evening. I'm Nikki Bro, principal of the Upper Elementary School, and this is my 22nd year here in Merrimack, so I am 100% Merrimack, live in Merrimack. My amazing assistant principal, Meg Fowler, who this is her 15th year in Merrimack.
So if you mind, we just have a brief overview, and then we already
Yes,
did
so
introductions, and
I
then
think
we'll
just
have you
start-
ask
we'll just-
questions.
She's going to do an overview
Oh,
first.
Just a
good.
quick,
Just the
if you don't
overview
mind,
first.
if
Oh,
it,
yes,
yeah.
yes,
So we already
yes.
did the introductions, and this year I am the representative for the schools. We usually have one person that will speak to any questions that pertain to all the schools. And then obviously if there's questions that are specific to the schools, then the principal will speak to those questions from that school. We just wanted to, it's important to note the elementary budgets for the 23-24 school year continue to reflect the priorities established by the school district and the Merrimack School Board. We continue to invest in all academic disciplines, the arts, and social and emotional learning. For the 2nd year, you will see we are offering co-curricular opportunities for students to participate in after-school educator-led enrichment activities. And in some of the questions tonight, we'll be able to detail you what some of those offerings are. At TFS and MES, based on some actual enrollments that we have, there's an addition of a grade 1 teacher at MES and a grade 1 teacher at Thornton's. And also at Thornton's Ferry is we're requesting an additional UA PE teacher. At JMU's, the budget includes adding 2 fifth grade teachers. In addition to the additional classrooms, the budget for supplies, furniture, and text reflects the costs associated with increased costs due to inflation. In the current year, the Merrimack School District has invested in literacy materials focused on foundational skills for the lower elementary and word study programs at JMU's. The budget for 23 and 24 includes those additional curriculum costs related to this initial expenditure this year, as well as updated science and social study curriculum materials based on the new curriculum that we're developing this year. That's it for our overview.
All right, do you want to start with Naomi? You're on page 1 of our questions.
That's what I get for doing my homework on time.
I would.
I thought I was gonna be last.
Nope, I beat you.
So I had a couple of general questions and a couple of specific questions, some of which you probably answered a little bit in your in what you said already. But my kind of overarching question, being a new person and this being my first time going through this budget, my head was kind of spinning and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of numbers and a lot of stuff. So I just was kind of wondering what your general feelings were on how did last year go in terms of budget? How is this year looking? Did we easily meet the needs of the students and the staff? Was it a struggle? Were there things we didn't do that we wanted to do or that we couldn't do? Did anything stand out? Or is anything looking to be different this year, or just any thoughts kind of on that?
Certainly, I can respond again as a representative, and we all work together. So this doesn't represent just my words, but all of us as a team. And for the 22-23 budget year, we're on target to meet the budget. And I think the biggest surprise, and it's a surprise but not, is the increased cost of supplies. And when we did the budget, right, the amount of inflation wasn't as significant now. For example, and I know you wanted an example, a case of paper when we did the original budget for this year was $26 a case. Now it's $46. So, but to be fiscally responsible and to meet the budget, we just have had to make some fiscally responsible decisions, maybe some less supply allocations, but we've been able to still meet the needs of all students and still meet the budget for this year. So that's the biggest piece. And then for the next year, again, the impact of inflation, as you see, is really in those supply lines. Again, we will be very prudent and very mindful of how we spend the money. But in the years that I have been here and in my years as an administrator, we've always been supported with everything that we need for students by the school board and always by our district staff. And so that has continued.
Yeah, then my next question, which you kind of have already answered, was about the cost of things going up, and I was kind of curious about the sort of breakdown between what there's increased costs across the board, and which ones are costs because increased because of the cost of supplies increase, and which ones are costs because of all the new curriculums we've been investing in, and is there a ratio there, and like what's sort of the breakdown? You don't have to be real specific, but I was just looking for like a general picture.
I'll look to Assistant Superintendent Matt Chevenel. I know he can provide that big picture piece. So Matt, I'm going to toss this to you.
Toss it to me. Well, yeah. So some of the new curriculum that was in this budget really doesn't hit until 2023-24, the budget we're working in right now. So you'll see that those increased in text, and there is an increase. I was dealing with Amy over here. We were looking at some new curriculum. What? Dealing with Amy? I'm sorry for my casual tone. Amy and I had a really intense conversation. And, you know, at first, the amount of shipping was like $13,000. I said, are you kidding? And she says, well, why don't we ask? We asked again, can you knock this down? Because this is absolutely ridiculous. So they knocked it down $4,000. So we're trying to do things like this. Julie had the example of paper increased from $26 to $46 a case, right? Well, at first blush, I want to recognize my staff: Pearl Bratton, accounts payable; Sarah Raffel, payroll; and Heather Wells, finance assistant and HR assistant. Pearl came up and says they're charging $59 a case. And so she called up a bunch of other vendors because no one would bid it out. No one would even quote your price. And so she got on the phone. She yelled at WB Mason for a half an hour. By the time she was done, she got it down to 46. And so that's what we're trying. That's what we're doing right now. We're just clawing back at these vendors. Number one, for the cost of supplies, and number two, can you get us the supplies? I mean, we're talking about new furniture or something like that. After the budget passes, if it passes in April and that furniture is still in the budget, we're going to have to cut a PO in April so we're assured of getting the furniture before school opens. You know, it's that much of a lead time. If you want to buy a dump truck now off the state bid at Grapponi, you've got to put in your order a year in advance to get it done. This is like unprecedented. So it's pervasive through the entire budget, and you'll see that when we get to certain other areas that you've asked questions about. But yeah.
Naomi, may I just make a comment also that one of the things that we notice in times of robust economic activity is companies in various industries expand, and sometimes expand significantly. In downturns that were created and precipitated by the COVID virus, companies scaled backwards, to be more commensurate with the actual level of demand. And in some cases, that scaled back level of activity is more reflective of the actual market demand. And so as the economy began to increase in activity again, many of these companies and industries did not necessarily commensurately increase their capacity, manufacturing capacity. And that's why we're seeing some shortages in supply chain, with a supply chain issue in various industries that are impacting us. I did give you just some limited graphical and tabular data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics in terms of the rates of inflation over the last 12 months, and in particular for educational supplies over the last 5 or 6 years. Matt and I put something together to present to you to give you a visual representation of what we're facing in terms of the decline in our purchasing value of every dollar that is really presenting a significant problem to us.
Thank you, everybody, for both answering the question and also for all of the due diligence you've been doing over the last year, like dealing with these issues, and your staff especially, like calling them up and getting the prices down, and everybody who's doing that thankless work. Thank you. It is much appreciated. My next question was, I think a couple other people had this question too, was how are the co-curricular programs going? What kinds of things are you offering? Who's taking advantage of them? Are they new and exciting things? Are they things we were offering before but now we're providing more support for? Just like a general update on how those are going.
So again, on behalf of the other administrators, I can respond to this. We're really excited, and we're going to be sharing with some details. There's some really cool offerings that are coming into place. So the two curricular programs, the first session starts this month in January, and that will run for 4 weeks. And the second set will happen in March. So we can't give you concrete numbers right now in terms of the number of students attending. But should you want that information, we will certainly give that to Mr. Olson for you to share at a subsequent board meeting. So right now, we've had many educators who are really excited about offering these after-school clubs. And across all the 4 schools, we have educators offering programs such as basketball, dance, virtual cooking, baking, chess, animation, various art clubs, friendship, sewing, crafts, crochet, sign language, and French. So those are just some of that, and we have even more offerings. And as I said, all the families, we're in the process of sending out those invitations now, and for families to sign their children up. And again, it's free, it's after school, really exciting, and the educators are passionate about it. And I know that you had asked another question about, is this appropriate for funding? We're finding right now, based on the interest from staff, that the $500 stipend and the $100 that we allocated for supplies is sufficient. And so we put that in for the same line item for next year.
Thank you. My other question, this is my newbie board member question, was there was a line item for professional organization memberships, and I was wondering, what organizations are we members of?
So, 2 associations. All of us are members of the New Hampshire School Principals Association, as well as the National Association of Elementary Principals.
Thanks. And all of my questions were about, like, costs are up. Why? The next one was about field trips, and I looked at it and I assumed that it was probably gas and everything, but I just wanted to say it out loud so that everyone could hear.
Certainly, and those are great questions, and I'm going to defer to
Yeah,
again.
I can
Jack
elaborate
Chevalier.
on that. Around a year and a half ago, we negotiated an extension with STA, our provider for transportation, and in that negotiation that went back and forth with Greg Stinson, the regional vice president, we were one of the first towns, school districts, to bring STA in New Hampshire. And they are extremely appreciative of our efforts over the years and have been a tremendous partner with us. I remember when they were delivering meals to people's houses during COVID, you had bus drivers in there. And we wanted to maintain the labor force because there was a mass exodus of bus drivers from that field, and a lot of school districts, when talking to other area school districts, did not have buses. In fact, did not have drivers for buses. In fact, I remember getting a call from the State Department of Education saying, can you help us out with drivers? Because we've got this district and this district and this district who don't have drivers. So we've had a great loyalty to that, because a lot of what STA is, they've rewarded their drivers. They've given them like a 6%, 6.5% wage increase over the last few years. The price of fuel, we don't have a fuel escalation charge on so diesel can go up to $12 a gallon. It's not going to hurt us. Some of the other districts you have here, they're paying what we're paying, but anything over $2.15 they have to pay. And with diesel fuel, that hurts. And so, yes, it is a function of the increased wages that were needed to keep drivers driving for Merrimack. When you can make 17 to 18 bucks working at McDonald's, do you really want to? That's a hard job, being a bus driver. It is a really difficult job to do. And I know a lot of them, they love it. They love the kids. They love the interaction, everything like that. But it's a tough job. So it was a combination of that, negotiating a new contract deal with no fuel surcharge, and to keep the drivers in our employ. So when we needed them, they were there. And when we came back full time, we weren't scrambling. A lot of other school systems were scrambling to get drivers. We weren't, because we did the right thing early on. So that's why you can see a jump in the fuel in the field trips. And plus, I think last year we weren't sure how many field trips were going to go, so we just kind of let's just level fund it for now, So this year, now we're kind of doing like a 2-year makeup. So that's what it was.
Thank you. I actually drove for STA for 2 years.
Oh, did
when my son was like 1 or 2.
Yes, I heard that. Yeah. Yeah.
They're amazing. All the bus drivers are amazing, and it is a really fun job and very challenging.
Yes.
Here's my other newbie question. What's Project Safeguard?
All right, so Project Safeguard has a wide and long history in our district. It was actually established with Marge Chaffrey in the 1980s, and a teacher, Warren Berry.
Warren
who was,
Berry.
Yeah, you remember Warren
Oh,
Berry?
I remember Warren.
Yep, yep.
He was my 8th grade science teacher.
Oh, well, there you go.
Boy, that makes me feel ancient. Thank you very much, Jenna.
So what they were looking for, and this is, 35 plus years ago, what they were looking for was something to enrich children and families, to meet the health curriculum and to give kids experiences in learning about like self-esteem and, how to manage having, challenges in your life and how you change when you become a teenager, and also to help families understand, how is a sixth grader different from a seventh grader and an eighth grader. So Project Safeguard invites parents to come to school for a day with our children. And we hire a variety of speakers, and we invite speakers from our community as well. So in the past, we've had Tom Frentis from the middle school, and he's done a presentation on what is MMS like. And that happens in the spring, and it's for our sixth graders. So they're ready to hear that information, and their parents are excited about that as well. We've had Chris Poulios, if anyone knows, he is a motivational speaker. He does tricks on a BMX bike and talks to kids about anti-bullying and how to be your best self and how to make good choices. And so the day runs where children and their parents come in. Ahead of time, they've picked workshops that they want to attend. There's a keynote speaker, and then they go to their workshops. There are some just for parents, some just for children, and some for both parents and their students. They have a lunch together, and then we typically bring in leaders from the high school. So we'll bring in kids from band, from sports, maybe from the robotic team, to talk to them about different things that, different types of leadership roles that you can have and what kind of led them there. And then we usually close with a special, like Chris Poulios is the person that we close with, the BMX motivational speaker. So it's expensive because we're hiring people within the community. We do get a break with the Merrimack Police. They do it for free, so we love having them. It's a wonderful day. We haven't had it since 2019 because of COVID. So this will be a reinitiation of it. We also have, because it's such an expensive program, we ask our Parent Faculty Association to also provide us with funds for feeding our presenters, doing breakfast, doing lunch. So that has helped out a lot as well. I'm going to answer your question. I know Jenna had a question about it as well in terms of effectiveness and how do we know, and when was the last time we looked at it. In 2019, we had 150 parents attend. So one of the ways that we've looked to see how effective is to see what kind of participation we have from our families. 2022 or 2023 is going to look different because some of the businesses that we have used year after year have now closed down. They couldn't make it through COVID. We have some research to do about what types of businesses, will come next, or speakers or motivational speakers. And then I envision after we do it this year and we have our parents this year, we can come back to you and share with you. I'd love to have parents report out on their experiences, and I'll have numbers of attendees. So I'd love to come back to you and share with you, what that looks like and what the feedback was from the parents.
I just want to follow up real quick since she just specifically addressed my question. The reason I asked that is because as a parent, having gone through it 3 times, I'm pretty sure 3 times, actually, I was offered the opportunity to go through it 3 times. I went twice. No offense to the third child. I didn't do it the third time. But I would have loved the opportunity to give some feedback because I actually remember my experiences and my very specific feedback that I was like, I wish somebody would ask about that. And I think it would be great to ask parents, but also students,
Definitely.
And see, what the effectiveness is and what the results we're seeing is. Because it's expensive, I'm not saying that we shouldn't keep doing it, but there might be something we could, change it, morph it into that might be more effective. That was my point in asking that question.
So if at some point in the future you're interested in having a little session where I could pick your brain and maybe you can share with us, some of the things that you would have liked to have seen on a form or to give feedback, that would be very helpful.
Awesome. Happy to do it.
Thank you.
So I'm very pro Project Safeguard. During the 80s, it used to be 6th grade, 8th grade, and 11th grade. I was a health teacher at Merrimack High School, and I was the director of Project Safeguard. And during the 6th and 8th grade, they used to go to Daniel Webster College. It was an all-day affair. It was a lot more expensive than it is today. But it gave kids an opportunity to be on a college campus. And then I know for a while it was at St. A's. During that period of time, because some of it was grant funded, there was a lot of data on the effectiveness of Project Safeguard. And it came out that it was really effective because they were talking about topics that parents could go home and talk to their children about that maybe that wouldn't have gotten brought up unless they had that opportunity. And some of the workshops help parents to be able to know how to have those conversations. Or, what workshops did you go to? Oh, what did you learn? So I just want to say thank you. I'm glad it's coming back. And, I look forward to maybe even expanding it because I don't know where we could do it, but I do like the idea of off campus and I like getting kids in middle school on a college campus. But
That's neat.
we're talking about a lot of money, and we're not talking about a lot of money this year, but in the future. So thank you.
Okay. I have two questions that are kind of the same, but they're for different schools. And it was just, there was a line item, and you should have this in your notes. I can't, this one is hard to say out loud. It came in a bunch under budget in 21, 22. And I was curious why. And it was kind of the same question for both. Sorry, that's not the greatest way to ask it out loud.
I think it was for both Reeds and at the upper. So thank you for asking that question because there is a little offset there. So last year, as all years, things happen, and we had 2 long-term sub positions. One was 5 weeks, one was 10 weeks. And as Matt said about the shortage of bus drivers, the shortage of substitutes, the shortage of finding certified good people to take these positions was really limited. And we were lucky enough to have our Title I tutors offer and step up to fill these positions. As I mentioned, one was 5 weeks, one was 10. I believe Nikki is similar, but a little bit different. And that's where a lot of that difference happened, is because they went from one position to the other, and we didn't fill those positions because we couldn't. There was nobody to fill them, so that's why.
So I had a teacher who had the opportunity to move up to the middle school to teach her first love, which was language arts. And so she took that opportunity, and I ended up hiring one of my Title I teachers as a permanent teacher in our building. And I had another teacher who had a maternity leave, and a teacher who had who also needed a substitute. And so I also used 2 of our very highly skilled Title I tutors to put into classroom positions because they're certified teachers. And so we were able to replace one for a time period, but we weren't able to replace them both permanently.
Thank you. I suspected it was something like that. I just wanted to ask publicly because it was a pretty big discrepancy. And then my last question, and then you can hear from someone other than me, yay, is I'm curious more about the second PE teacher at Thorntons Ferry. Why is it needed? What will it look like having 2 PE teachers? Just more information.
Again, thank you for that really excellent question. And to support the growth in student enrollment at Thorntons and the increase in the number of classrooms that we have, we need an additional unified arts teacher. And the unified arts teacher is needed to meet the contractual obligations also for teacher planning and collaboration time. And so when we talked about what that additional UA teacher would be, we selected a physical education teacher. One, we wanted to make sure the offerings were equitable across all the schools. So for example, I wouldn't add a Spanish teacher because we're not offering Spanish at any of the other schools. So it had to be something that was within the array of offerings that are at all the schools, because equity across schools is so important. Then we really looked at the research, and I think everybody can agree that the research is clearly linked the benefit of physical education and movement in schools not only for children for a lifetime of health and well-being and fitness, but there is a direct correlation to increase academic and social and emotional achievement. So that was a big reason. The other piece is when you add a UA teacher, you're adding now to space. And spaces, we have a space crunch at our school, and the gymnasium lends better to having two UA teachers in the gymnasium than if we were going to have another music teacher or art teacher in very small spaces. So we were able to accommodate. We have to do some things to, obviously, for noise and all that, but the gymnasium is an easier space to work with. And like I said, that final piece was making sure that we stayed equitable with the other schools and offering something that is currently offered in the other schools. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it did. Thank you. I didn't know why two PE teachers, and I
Yes.
was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. So
Yeah.
I'm getting that it's actually a requirement that we have a certain ratio of unified arts teachers to
Yes.
our student body, and because of the size of the student body, you needed to add one, and then that's why you
Exactly.
picked
We
the
have
one you
about
picked.
128 more students next year projected for at Thornton's Ferry. And so that
128 more than you have right now, or
128 more than the other
Oh, the other
other
schools. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So in order to support that capacity, we have to add that other teacher.
yes, thank you.
You asked such good questions, Naomi. So when it comes to numbers and budgets, I have to go through them several times to wrap my head around them. And so once I realized I missed the deadline to submit questions by a day and a half, I kind of went through quickly and just was looking at discrepancies between 21 and 22 and then 22 and 23. And some of these numbers I had said to myself, like, wow, why is there such a difference between what was spent and what it's budgeted for? And then I was like, oh, right, that whole COVID thing happened. And so a lot of the questions I sort of answered myself and you answered, and then with Naomi's question. So I really only have two, just looking for clarification. And these kind of apply to all elementary schools because I noticed some commonalities there. I noticed an increase in police detail for a lot. So I'm just looking for clarification on that.
The rates went up.
Does it really come down to just rates?
Lot of it could be it's a function of frequency and the rates. We usually get the notice that the rates are going to go up right before the start of the school year, so it kind of makes it impossible to budget it properly for 'em. That's the way it is. But anybody else has anything else to say about that? Because I know the rates did go up.
I will, only because MES had a police item line for a number of years, and then we took it out for a while since we didn't use it quite as regularly, and the police have always come to events voluntarily, like the first day of school and things like that. But what we've noticed, which is exciting, we have more students at MES. Parking is less of an issue than at the other two buildings because of all the different spaces we have to park. However, when we have whole school events, parking has definitely become more of an issue. So we added that line back in for next year, which is the same amount per detail as the other two schools, but we're going to add it for our open house where we have the entire school coming and trying to get in and out of the parking lot and the spaces.
So if I
Can
could just say
confirm.
something. So on my first year asking the budget question, this was a big question to Reed's Ferry, like, why do you need this? Then last year I went to the art show and I was like, I know why they need it. Was a zoo. And it was perfect because I go, all right, I'm 100% on board with that police officer because I don't even know. It could have been 25 accidents if they weren't there.
Yeah, and then you get the art show at Thornton's Ferry, which is on the road, and all the families running up and down the road, and it's police details necessary.
It really has
We're
a lot.
okay.
It really has a lot to do with the geography of your building, and TFS is a tough one because the amount of parking, and at least Reed's has the longer driveway, and the middle school has the longer driveway. But still, when you have a big event, you have a big event, and there's nothing you can do about it. So
A good question because that was my question
Yeah.
2 years ago.
It's like, what's going down at these elementary schools? So my only other question is, it's more, I guess it's a question. It's more of just putting this thought out there. I noticed, again, across the board with not just elementary schools, but really the whole district, the answer is most likely COVID, but I'm going to ask it anyway. As far as professional meetings, workshops, and conferences, 21-22 saw very little participation in that. And even despite the fact that many of these events were virtual and online, and that's concerning, I guess, that there's so little participation in these things. But I understand that it might be a COVID thing too. So just looking for some clarification on that.
I mean, I can address it on, and like I said, Julie mentioned, we've all talked and shared it. In addition to there was COVID and there was not a lot offered. There were a number of workshops and things that were offered for free. A lot of the curriculum work we did do was new curriculum for teachers, and that was offered free of cost. I think the other thing to keep in mind is the COVID years and then the year after. There's a lot of needs within the buildings, and so I know a lot of days I made the decision to not participate in a particular training offsite or even sometimes at all because the needs of the building, they needed me there. However, we've already signed up for a bunch of things this year, and we will certainly, that line will look different in this budget.
Well, and that's sort of what I was concerned about. Like, are our teachers able to go to these things? Is it a money thing? Was it a COVID thing? Or is it like, we can't afford to lose you today, we need you in the building? Which I know subs are an issue for sure, but our teachers need professional development. So if we're going to budget for this, I will hope that our teachers are able to go to these things, and that they're not being held back because of, employee limitations or whatever you want to call it.
And I would turn to Matt Chavanel too. The line item that the teachers use for professional is different than what we have sitting in our budget.
There you
Yeah,
go.
see,
So that's a little bit different.
The professional development for teachers is all contractual obligations. It's like 3.1 A, B, C, D, and whatever it is. It's all in the district budget. This is for basically administrators, right?
So that's just the administrator line.
Yeah, we couldn't go anywhere. We were stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. That's what I got.
I have some wonderfully brilliant colleagues who have answered all my questions right now. I mean, you all have answered. They've asked the same questions I have. Being a newbie, I had a lot more questions last year. I'm good.
So I have a few questions, but also a lot of the questions got answered about field trips and bus drivers and rate increases. I do have a question about the new reading specialist, and I'm just wondering how many students are currently reading below grade level. Will those services be for all students? What does that job description look like?
So for this question, I'm going to toss it over to Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and
good.
Instruction, Amy Doyle.
Thank you. Since I came on board, one of the things that Bill and I talked a lot about was really thinking about what is needed at each one of the schools, and knowing that you can't ask for everything. And so when we went into this discussion, I was really impressed about the collaboration and the collegiality among the administrators, really thinking about, what are the things that are needed not only at their individual schools, but collectively. When you are new to a system, I think sometimes you can see maybe areas that, if you've been here a long time, that aren't as prevalent. So we currently have 5 reading specialists in the district that they serve in the role called the language arts coordinator. And we have 2 former language arts coordinators here tonight, so they can talk to you a little bit more about those positions. But what I learned was that they essentially are instructional coaches at the lower elementary school. So they look at really coordinating the efforts around the literacy instruction, so reading and writing. They also do a lot overseeing the intervention. So they oversee the Title I tutors. They provide their professional development. They do a lot of observations and evaluations of teachers. They're compensated for that. They have a stipend, but they don't have a full contingency of intervention. Other places that I've worked and where I've been administrators, there were people that just all day long, that's what they do. Every 30 minutes, they're bringing in another group of students. And What I came to find out, and I'm sure you can jump in, is that we have tier 1 universal instruction, which we certainly need work in. That's part of the discussion about foundations. What are we going to do about phonemic awareness? What are we going to do about word study at the upper elementary? So really looking at almost a strategic plan for literacy, but we don't currently offer tier 2 intervention in the truest sense. Kids go from the regular ed setting, they can get an additional intervention from their classroom teacher or support from a para, and then they go onto the Title I list, right? The waiting list. So from there, you asked the question about how many Title I tutors we have. We have 10. The lower elementary, and that's across TFS, RFS, MES, and JMUs. So those schools. MES is not currently designated as a Title I school, but we offer Title I alike tutoring at that building that Matt has a different line that he pays out of the operating fund. So, but at TFS and RFS and JMUs, we have Title I tutors that we pay through our allocation from the state. Now, above and beyond that, we also pay their benefits and other things. But so those people have a group of students that they can work with. It's around 20 students, 28 students. They can't do any more than that. They can't do any less than that. They prioritize reading, but once they fill their 28 slots, that's it. They can't see anymore. And so there's this gap that starts to widen, because if you only have 28 students that are on that student's caseload and we have a waiting list of 80 kids, sometimes more, they maybe don't qualify in first grade or second grade by the time they get to third grade. As you can imagine, that gap has continued to widen. Then they are referred to special education, because at that point, it's substantial. And as Bill has mentioned, when you move from the regular ed setting to the special ed setting, you're going to double the cost it takes to educate that student. So that led us to, what do we feel like would be the first step for an intervention? And that's where we landed on bringing this request to the board and putting it in the budget for a reading interventionist. I don't know that this person necessarily needs the reading specialist endorsement license. Both Michelle and Nikki have that. We also have 4 classroom teachers in the district that are serving as classroom teachers and special ed teachers that have that license. I don't know that the level of expertise and education that they went through is what is needed. I would be looking at it more as an interventionist, someone who is going to be able to take a student and fill gaps in real time. We're not talking about tier 3, where students would be going out of the regular ed setting for 30 minutes. You're talking about, well, how can I teach this student this scope and sequence of phonemes so that they can access the text. And so that's where we led to this particular request. You asked the question earlier, Lori, will that ensure that every student receive intervention? I don't think that's possible, that every single student that is reading below grade level with this one additional position would get that kind of direct instruction. What I do believe that this budget captures is a coordinated effort to look at tier 1 instruction. What are we doing in the regular ed setting? What are we doing in the tier 3 setting? And then what are we doing for those kids that are in between? Looking at those offerings. And I think that the reading interventionist gives you that immediate response. How to do.
May I just say also, from my own experience in another district, early intervention services to primary level students has one of the largest return on investments of anything we could offer to students. It's a service that not every student has a disability that requires going into special education, particularly if they have some deficiency in reading. Sometimes some children just need some additional practice. And by hiring these reading, and I agree, we probably change the title to reading interventionists, you eliminate an awful lot of the propensity to refer students to special education based on the fact that they truly don't have a disability. They just need some additional practice and work. And about 30 years ago, I made a decision with other staff in another district to invest in early intervention services. Many superintendents in the surrounding districts used to ask me, how does your school system have such high levels of achievement? And one thing I found is that none of the others, had invested their funds into early intervention services as we had. And that was, to me, the one discernible investment that we made in the academic progress of children. And as Amy said, we've always referred to the fact that once there's a financial benefit to it also, that once a child goes from a general education setting to a special education setting, because of the much lower pupil-teacher ratio, the cost per pupil to educate those students almost doubles. So the general education early intervention service, I guarantee you 3 or 4 years from now, you'll be saying it's one of the best things we've ever invested in, and we will probably, be glad to, review data with you. We will probably be requesting additional interventionists, not only in reading, but also in mathematics in the coming years.
So I can see, very clearly now, when you do the tier and where the gap is. And it really fulfills two of our goals, because one of our goals this summer was reading and literacy, but the other was high school dropout. And so as you explain it, you can see where, by fourth grade, you can almost determine who might be a high school dropout. So thank you for that explanation. Thank you for that. Anna? Okay. All right. So my next question was the proposed furniture, the 7,500. Was that for the new position or yes? Okay.
Yep.
So that's
easy.
easy.
For the addition.
Then we already did all the increase in supplies and why everything's gone up. And then why we need the increase in text. And we already have why we're having 2 new teachers at Thornton's Ferry, because we have 128 new kids. Okay. Got it. Any other questions? So I think Nikki has to stay, right? Because we didn't go through all of her questions yet. I didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But everyone else. Maybe she needs you guys, so stay.
I think they're included. I think her questions were included in the elementary, so I think we're good.
Mine were separate, I think.
Were they?
Yeah, but I don't know. I don't even see.
Look at the next page.
Okay. Yeah, so I had a different page for JMU's, but it got sent. I didn't send it. I just sent it straight to. But again, I sent it with my husband's 400-year computer. So, so I told him we need a new laptop. But so I just
Lori-
I'll just ask the questions if that's okay. So I was very curious about the 5th grade positions. So I was looking at the data from 5 years ago, where we were student population, looking at the increased population, which would be like 30 students, but then the decrease in 2 years. So I just want to know why we feel, what are the class sizes, and why we feel we need those positions.
Thank you. Over the past 2 years, really, we've made a real commitment to lower our class sizes. The upper elementary has had typically very high class sizes. We've had classes of 26, 27, 28. I've had 28 5th graders when I was a 5th grade teacher. And that has a tremendous impact on what the class looks like. And so we made a real commitment to become more in line with like our 4th grade classes. And when you look right now at the 4th grade classes, there are 13 teachers. And so we have 11 right now in 5th grade, and we're moving those students in. So to keep our numbers, it puts us at 21.2, I believe, or right around 21, to keep our numbers in line with them in 5th grade and in 6th grade. That is why we're asking for those additional teachers. So it's not something that has been past practice. Like I said, the upper elementary has very typically had higher numbers than the middle school. We just happened to be a place where the middle school had to have 24 or less because of a state regulation for science labs. We were in elementary school, so we didn't have to have that, which allowed us to increase our numbers. So we've been very careful to keep our numbers more in line, and this allows us to do that.
Okay. And then the other questions I had were, when you looked at your budget, there was a number of places where it was noted there was a 10% increase where the elementary schools did not have that high percentage. So I wanted just an explanation on the 10%.
Sure. So if you look at the elementary budgets, we planned together, I think that if you could point out maybe specifically, and I can answer to that, there are some places where we have a 3% increase. One place that we have an increase that they don't is the co-curriculars. We have a very high number of teachers that want to participate in the co-curriculars. So we're at 5,500 next year. You will see that that is a difference. We'd like to add 2 more teachers to that. So we would, so that's the increase for that. It's $250 per co-curricular activity. So that's one increase. Is there something else where you see that we added it and they didn't?
Matt made notes and he'd say this would be a 10% increase. So I was like, just curious, like throughout the thing, like it just seemed that when we were going through it, there was just more 10% increases. Like most places, like replacement of the tables or, we're fine. Project Safeguard was fine. Let me just see.
Yeah, there was some for general supplies that were a 10% increase based upon inflation. And I think Nikki in her budget and JMU's put that statement in.
I just put the statement in, but like when
But it
we
was
worked-
it was universal
Yep.
throughout the rest of them. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, so I, for example, the world language supplies it's a 10% increase for world language.
Right,
Yeah.
because we've looked at all of our supplies as an extra 10%, but they don't have world language. So it's just the upper L that has the French and Spanish.
Okay, so everybody was told to go like on new supplies up to 10%.
Up to 10%.
because of
That was the
inflation.
instructions.
All right, that
from-
makes sense, and that
Now I
was
get
my
it.
only
And I just
question.
put it
like,
in there for
why
each
did
one,
you
just
have
so,
those
like,
10% and no one else did?
Because she wrote it in.
I wrote it in. But
It was just a
Follow
curiosity
directions.
question.
I think it's important to note too, we don't call it out as much, but like last year we bought recording equipment for music and we bought a new saxophone. We are good now. And so we really worked hard to say, okay, these are 2 areas that we can put a 0 level in. PE, when we did the workout to what it would cost for a new Frisbee game that we're going to be purchasing, it came in at $150 less than the budget previously, than the previous year. So we didn't just say like, oh, 10%. But what is happening is in most of the UAs, everything's increasing. So the cost of paint, the cost of paper, the cost of canvas, and so it really did impact so many of the areas. But what we are trying to do, like you don't see the furniture. We don't have new additional furniture at JMU's this year. We are still working on a 12-year plan of
I saw
getting
that.
our round tables, which if you've been, I mean, the upper elementary APR is gorgeous and the round tables are amazing for kids because no one's at the end. You're all just together and you're all in it together. But we were able to say, okay, Marcia McGill did a wonderful job at making plans where she'd say, okay, this is an 8-year furniture plan. Well, we've reached where we need to be. And so that was an area that was very significant that we were able to cut down at the lower elementary, or at the upper elementary as compared to the needs of the lower elementary. So we are trying to look at our budgets very carefully and saying like, okay, there's an increase in the word study program to help support our kids with the new changes that are happening with foundations. Where can we look to kind of offset that?
And sometimes you had the statement where it was kind of like an inside joke in central office. We're on the 10th year of a 5-year plan, right? Because
have that
of
there.
previous needs to roll back in different budgets years gone by. So it's kind of funny.
Lori, may I just make one comment? You mentioned class size a few minutes ago, and I've said to you in the public in the past that 2 of the most significant variables that contribute to academic achievement are the quality of the classroom teacher, but also a reasonable class size. And I want to thank the principals for great and thoughtful conversations with us to make sure that we have very consistent numbers across the elementary grade levels in terms of class size, because that's extraordinarily important. Someone's not at 16 to 1, and elsewhere it's 25 to 1. We've tried very hard to plan accordingly for that. You know, there's always a question of, well, does class size really make a difference? If any of you are interested, you know, the Tennessee study that was conducted many years ago and has been analyzed over and over again, it's probably the most significant piece of research with respect to class size, and that does and has indicated that there is a very important relationship between reasonable class size and academic achievement. So if you'd like a copy of that, we'll be glad to copy it and present it to you to answer any questions that the public might have, because class size can sometimes be very relational in nature, where someone will say, well, I had 40 in my class when I was going. Well, it's a different day and age and different demands on
that's
students. So,
true, and we have just so much more inclusion. So we ask
That's
teaching
correct.
to do so much more today than we've ever done in the past. So we do understand that.
Yeah.
Can I add something? I have an interesting position here because I have a student who will be an incoming fifth grader, and those kids were hit in COVID in their first and second grade year. We never want to have large class sizes, but to have that particular group of kids whose foundational learning was so disrupted, I mean, as wonderful as the jobs everybody's done, it is not the same as being in school with a teacher and getting that, especially when we did the hybrid thing when they came back. Those kids, I mean, we really want their class sizes to be manageable, because in fifth grade, they are not the fifth graders you would have saw pre-COVID. They're not those same kids. They're not at that level. And it's just because COVID really impacted them right when they were learning to read and basic math and all of that. So I see it, you know, across the board. It's funny because, you know, I have this group of parents and we're all talking about the same thing. Like, wow, our kids are behind where we saw our older kids being. And it's interesting to see that play out, but to make this change right now when they're making this jump is so critical. So I'm glad we had the foresight to look at that and keep those class sizes smaller so that our students' learning could be increased.
Any other comments?
I taught elementary school for 7 years. Class size matters.
Yeah. I just want to thank everyone. I have 5 grandchildren. I have 7, but I have 5 in school. 3 are with Michelle, and 2 are with Julie. And of course, they're going to come this way, and I love your school too. But they come home from school, and I always ask them, "How do you like school?" And they love school, and that's the answer we really want. And I know they love school because. Not only because they're learning, but because of the climate of those schools, and it's so important to have that solid education in those beginning years. So thank you for all of you, and thank you for presenting a budget. And we're going to do our best over here. I don't know, but we'll do our best.
Thank you for being such passionate educational leaders.
Thank you. So we're at old business.
And I don't have any old business. I don't have any new business tonight, because we wanted to pretty much dedicate the night to
Okay,
to
so
budgets.
old business, we have no old business, but we do have new business. The new businesses we are talking about, we haven't confirmed, moving our meeting times during the budget season to an earlier period of time. We don't know if it'll be 6 or 6:30 based on administrative abilities, but the board has agreed that would be better, so people could get home at a reasonable hour, because you still have to get up and go to school the next day.
That'd be great. I'll stay in touch with you about that in terms of the
Okay,
scheduling.
that's great.
I do have one comment on that, but I'll send it via email.
Okay. Anything else? Other committee reports? No, me neither. Correspondence? I just had one correspondent from a Merrimack woman who was very excited about the Pathway to Graduation position. She had worked in Hollis schools, and she said that she's just so happy Merrimack's addressing their issues with dropouts.
Would you mind, if you had an email, would you mind sending that to me so I can take a look at it?
She actually, yes, it's in my phone. She texted me,
Okay.
but I will, I'll show it
I'd like
you.
to make connections
Yeah,
with her.
her name is, I'll tell you.
Okay.
after. Okay. Okay. All right. I mess up on that sometimes. All right. Comments. The only comment I have is I think that everyone did a great job with their budget presentations. They came very well prepared. They answered all of our questions. And I do like Jenna's change that we asked the questions because it just felt more natural this year than them. This question is from, like, we got to ask. And half of our questions were answered. I think all of Ken's questions were answered except for one. I'm like, oh, that's his question. So
Yeah, and last year they would get repeated, and so much better. So that was thank you.
And thank you for your thoughtful questions, because it's clear that you've done your due diligence in going through the budget book.
So now, public comments on agenda items. Does anyone want to make, here we go. Yes, good.
Hi, good evening. All right, we're working. My name's Heather Robitaille at 45 Springfield Circle. I wanted to thank the work that all of our administrators did for these budget proposals. As a parent of an elementary school student, I am fully in support of early intervention. I wholeheartedly believe that, like Joanne mentioned at the beginning, but these types of things, Amy, you mentioned as well and echoed by the board, but they'll pay dividends for our children not only in their academic careers, but beyond. So I am heartened to see the investment, hopefully, being put in that. I has my full support. I know that there are a number of challenges in creating a fiscally responsible budget that will also provide educational opportunities for all of our students. So I do appreciate the board for all the questions that you asked, and I know all the thought that you will put into the budget and the budget process. As a resident of Merrimack, one of the things that I would appreciate, and I am kind of new to like looking at all the budgeting stuff, so it's possible I missed it. If supporting documents as you're able to provide them to the public could be shared. I looked at the district website and I didn't see them. Again, definitely could have missed it, but I know as a taxpayer that there are often questions that are broached about what the school district is spending their budget for and what different items are spent on. So I think having these types of documentation available would hopefully give more transparency towards that process, and that it is our taxpayer money being very well spent for our children's futures and for our administrators and all of our wonderful staff that we have in Merrimack. So my heartfelt thanks for all of you, all of your work, to our maintenance staff and their crew for everything that they're doing at MES. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Okay. A motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Seconded by Jenna. Motion by Naomi. I guess that's it. I guess
We
we
gotta
did.
vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.